Applying color principles. Now we are in chapter number 6 in our book, page 77. Now that you know what hue, value, and saturation means, we want to start making compositions applying these concepts. We are going to first create the illusion of space, depth, and then the illusion of transparency. Before we start with the illusion of space, we are going to make an exercise using scales or progressions. The grayscale, the one that you're seeing right now, is the most common. We already know that. It goes from white to black, but this scale is only a progression in value. We can also make progressions using black to create different shades, and we can use progressions using white to create what we call different tints. We already did that with the second exercise that we did in this class. This is an example of using a progression not just in value, but in this case we see a progression also in hue. The red is changing into a lilac, and it's also going from a dark red or an intense red into a lighter value lilac. Another example of a progression that changes in hue and value, we can see the red turning into a light green. The red is a medium value and the green is a much lighter in value. Another example of a progression using both hue and value. You see that the light blue turns into a very dark green, and so this is change in value, light to dark, and change in hue, blue to green. Another example, the pale yellow turns into a muted blue. So there is change in hue, change in value. The yellow is very light, the blue is dark, and the saturation here is constant. All these colors are muted colors. Progression in hue and value. The one on the left is a bluish lilac, and the one on the right is a reddish purple. So this one is a nice example of using the three components of a color. We see here a change in hue from magenta to green, a change in value, the dark magenta to the light green, and change in saturation. The magenta is a prismatic color and this green on the right is a muted color. These kind of progressions are very often used by painters, and so we here have an example of Johannes Vermeer, the girl with the pearl earring, and you can see a progression in her headband. The blues are go from a light blue into very dark blue. Same thing is happening with her outfit. And this in her face you can see also a progression that is going from a very light beige to a darker brown. This is used in this case to create the illusion of luminosity. This is Edward Hopper, and also you can see very clearly how he uses progressions to create illuminated and dark areas. We can see the sky goes from the clouds on the bottoms are very light blue and it goes into a darker blue. The greens on the trees go from an apple green to a very dark green at the bottom of the trees, or the trees that are in the background. Same thing with the grass. You can see that it goes from a yellow to a richer orange, and then a darker orange into brown in the background of the grass. Same thing is happening with the window frame, light blue to dark blue, the dress of the woman in the window. So this is what we are going to do in this exercise. We are going to create progressions, not just in value, but also using saturation and hue. The exercise consists of making 2 sets of progressions that later we are going to be interspacing. When we mix these colors, like in the composition on the right, we create the illusion of depth. We're beginning to create the illusion of depth. In this case, the bands of colors were not cut precisely in the same with the same width, and the 2 progressions, original progressions, change in value and in hue. This is the format in which you are going to be presenting your composition. I am attaching this also in a separate document. And these are some old exercises done by students before. So this is the format. On the right, you are going to be gluing your pieces intercepting, and on the left, they're going to be the actual progressions that you started with. This is the first one of a series of pictures of myself doing the exercise. The first thing that you see me doing here is take a different piece of paper, Bristol board, and I measure 1-inch bands and to create 8 different rows. So don't forget to measure 1 inch on each side and then join the lines. You see me here mixing the colors that I'm going to be using for my progression. I'm choosing 2 different values. The phthalo blue is really dark, and then a green that is very light, and also 2 different hues. I'm going from blue to green. In this picture, I'm painting the first band or the first row. This picture shows you how little you have to add of the dark color that you're going to be adding to your light color. Start your progression this way, from light to dark, adding little amounts of your dark color. I'm painting here the second band. Don't forget to apply 2 coats of the paint that you're using. And you see me here applying more of the blue to create the different layers. This picture shows you what you are going to see initially. The green in the second row is dry, but the green in the third row is still wet. But once the paint on the row number 3 begins to dry, it's going to get darker, and you will see the progression much clearly. Mixing more blue into the green, and you can see now the difference between the rows number 2 and 3. That green really got much darker when it dried out, and now the greens in row number 3 and 4 are the ones that look a little bit similar. I'm adding here more paint and painting along. More blue. and more blue in here. I'm painting the 6th row, and you will see that this is my last row. I'm painting 8 different sections. I didn't get to use the actual phthalo blue in here. Don't worry if you don't use your one of the colors. It's more important to have a correct progression, even though if it's a narrow progression, than trying to use the colors that you wanted initially. Do not paint your last row with in this case, the phthalo blue, and the first one with the light blue, and try to match the colors that go in between. That's much harder. Just paint the 8 sections as you go, and if you don't get to paint the darkest one, it's still gonna be fine. After the paint is dry, I cut with a ruler the different stripes. And here you see me measuring the different sections that I'm going to cut. This is a drawing of what I'm cutting. I'm going to cut a little piece that is 5 inches width by 3/4 of an inch tall, and another small piece that is going to be for my actual progression, and this piece is 2.5 inches by 1/2 inch. So what you see shaded are the pieces that I'm going to be using. When you cut this, always measure with your ruler, and always cut with a ruler and with an X-Acto knife. You see me here cutting with a ruler and with an X-Acto knife. Never ever cut with scissors, it's never gonna be straight. And to create the illusion, we need the utmost craftsmanship in here. If you have gaps between, the illusion is not going to happen. Here you can see the tools that you can use for this exercise. You can use a razor blade, you can use an X-Acto knife, you need a pencil, and you need a ruler with a metallic edge. I cut here already my second progression, and I'm cutting the last pieces of my second progression. You see how I arrange everything temporarily on the right side. I'm not gluing as I go along, I just need the pieces for now. These are all my cut sections. I intercept them in choosing to have all the light colors on the right and all the darker value colors on the left. This is one possibility. This is a picture of the second possibility. Here I mix them in different ways. Instead of having all the light values on one side and the dark values on the other one, here I mix them. You see where on the left you can see the dark blues with the golden yellow that is lighter in value, and on the other extreme you can see the dark purple with the light green. I think that from the two, this is the composition that I'm going to choose. I didn't glue down anything yet, I'm just choosing what I'm going to be doing. In this other picture, I took a third piece of paper and I glue everything down as tightly as possible, so I don't have almost any gaps in between the pieces. And after I glue them down, then I put the ruler on top of the paper and I cut all the excess corners in this progression. And it's more important to have a neat progression than to fit exactly the outline that I gave you. If it's a little bit less than 5 inches, don't worry about it. Let me show you how the piece, this is how the piece looks. The actual interspersing of the colors, it took the whole width of the page, and on the top I have the two progressions, original progressions that I used to create this composition. The goal here is to begin to see how these colors can work together, what makes them look more interesting, how you can create really interesting compositions this way, and how colors begin to float a little bit when they clash with each other. This is the end of my presentation.